Good afternoon and welcome to Moneycontrol live stream. You're watching the closing bell. I'm Santosh Nair.
And I'm Yatin Mota.
Benchmark indices stretched their winning streak to the third successive session today, but once again it was marked by low volumes, and brokers said that it was largely short covering of positions that helped push up prices today. And among the prominent gainers were shares from the auto, PSU, banking, pharma, FMCG and IT sectors. The India Volatility Index fell by about 2% to 14.8. And among the prominent Nifty gainers, we had Bajaj Finserv, HDFC Life, Bajaj Finance, SBI Life and Hindalco. Overall, life insurance companies had a fairly good run today. That was on the back of a report by CLSA, which upgraded quite a few stocks in the sector. And among the prominent losers, we had BPCL, Coal India, Cipla, Apollo Hospitals and NTPC. Yatin.
So, as Santo mentioned in his opening remarks, volumes were quite low, and I think Santo, the Federal Reserve decision, the FOMC decision is something that the markets are waiting for. You think a 25 basis point hike?
Well, Yatin, for once the Fed is really in a spot, and there is merit in both arguments, those arguing for a 25 basis point hike as well as those saying that the Fed should pause. Now, if you look at the 25 basis point camp, they are saying that the battle against inflation is not won yet, and one way of probably assuaging the financial system and even the depositors at large is the Fed hiking rates by 25 basis points to say that okay, this is the bigger battle to be fought. We are not so worried about the banking system, that part is under control. Whereas the Fed also knows that the moment it pauses, immediately markets get into a celebratory mode, and that is the last thing that the Fed wants. It makes its battle to control inflation that much harder. And on the other hand, you have some like Goldman Sachs who are arguing that probably now it's a good time for the Fed to back off, because what the Fed intends to do is anyway probably reduce the flow of credit in the system, which is anyway being achieved because of the pressure being seen in the system. So clearly lending standards are expected to get tighter, which means that lending will automatically be under check. So arguments on both sides, it will be interesting to see how the Fed plays it.
Absolutely. So Fed Reserve जो कि यूएस की सेंट्रल बैंक है, इसका जो डिसीजन है रेट हाइक का वो इम्पॉर्टेंट है, और शायद बाजार इसीलिए आपको थोड़ा बहुत सुस्ती में दिखाई पड़ रहा है. ऑब्वियसली काफ़ी सारी छुट्टियां हैं और लॉन्ग वीकेंड्स आपको आते हुए दिखाई देंगे कुछ ही हफ्तों में, तो शायद मार्केट एक लेड बैक मूड में है और कहीं ना कहीं बहुत सारे इवेंट्स हैं, प्लस जो एल नीनो का वेदर इफेक्ट है उसके ऊपर अगर हम देखें तो काफ़ी सारी चेंजेस आपको ग्लोबल कमोडिटी मार्केट्स में दिखाई पड़ रही हैं. गोल्ड रिकॉर्ड लेवल्स पे है, क्रूड मल्टी ईयर लो पे है, तो काफ़ी सारे डिस्ट्रप्शंस हो रहे हैं. देखना ये होगा सेटल कैसे होगा चीज़, और मुझे लगता है कि जैसे ही एक फेडरल रिजर्व का डिसीजन आ जाएगा, मोस्ट प्रोबेबल एक 25 बेसिस पॉइंट्स हाइक, उसके बाद ही शायद मार्केट शांत होगा और एक डायरेक्शन लेगा ऊपर की तरफ या नीचे की तरफ.
Well, and with that, let's move on to the stocks on our watch list this afternoon. PSU bank stocks in general had a fairly good day, and one of the prominent gainers was Bank of Baroda. This stock too had taken a beating some weeks back. It had hit a 52-week high of 197 and then retreated all the way to below 160. Today, again, it was among the prominent gainers of the day, rising by close to about 3%. Now, Morgan Stanley has retained its overweight rating on the stock, and it has a price target of 220 rupees for Bank of Baroda. According to Morgan Stanley, the key points, the key arguments in favor of Bank of Baroda, one is that its franchise is quite different from that of its peer group. Also, the fact that its lending standards, its credit underwriting standards both on realty and SME, those have tightened over the last few years. Besides that, the Bank of Baroda has also made significant investments in technology over the years. And lastly, Bank of Baroda World, that's their app, has about 30 million active customers, and this compares with about 50 million active customers on the SBI Yono app.
Absolutely, and financials are something that we'll be watching out for. But Mahindra and Mahindra, that is one stock you need to keep on your radar, because आज IFC यानी इंटरनेशनल फाइनेंस कॉरपोरेशन ने लगभग 600 करोड़ का इन्वेस्टमेंट महिंद्रा एंड महिंद्रा की इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल सब्सिडरी में किया, और ये इन्वेस्टमेंट के बाद महिंद्रा एंड महिंद्रा को लगता है कि थोड़ा बहुत और फंड रेजिंग आपको यहाँ आता हुआ नजर पड़ेगा आगे जाके। CLSC की यहाँ बाय रेटिंग है 1619, यानी 1619 का टारगेट इस पर्टिकुलर स्टॉक पे है। ऑब्वियसली महिंद्रा एंड महिंद्रा की बात करें तो इनकी जो स्कॉर्पियो एन है और XUV 700 है, दोनों ही लॉन्चेस बहुत बेहतरीन कर रही है मार्केट में। ट्रैक्टर सेगमेंट को ऑब्वियसली एक रिस्क है एल नीनो का और वेदर कंडीशंस का, लेकिन इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स की बात करें, जो थर्ड सिलेंडर है महिंद्रा एंड महिंद्रा का, यहाँ भी आप देखेंगे अफोर्डेबल SUVs कंपनी लॉन्च करती हुई दिखाई पड़ेगी और शायद इलेक्ट्रिक SUVs में अभी कंपनी को एक अपर एज है, ऐसा CLSA का मानना है। स्टॉक ऑब्वियसली अपने 52 वीक हाई से काफ़ी अच्छी तरीके से करेक्ट हुआ है क्योंकि ट्रैक्टर वॉल्यूम्स में स्लो डाउन एक्सपेक्टेड है, लेकिन ये देखा जाएगा कि वेदर कंडीशंस कैसी इवॉल्व होती हैं और इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स पे कंपनी के कितने नए मॉडल्स आगे जाके खास करके अगले 12 to 18 मंथ्स में आते हैं। तो रखिए नज़र M&M पे।
M&M had in the auto pack, it had one of the best runs over the last year, clearly
Yes.
an outperformer, and after that, as you mentioned, it did come off sharply. Now the interesting thing again here is that with the investments in the EV story, now EV was one of the key drivers of the M&M stock last year. Now that the story is again got ignited, it will be interesting to see how this stock plays out. Moving over to the last stock on my watch list this afternoon, Sula Vineyards. Now the stock has been in the limelight over the last couple of trading sessions. In fact, the stock had a fairly indifferent run ever since its listing just a couple of months back. But of late there seems to be renewed activity in the stock. CLSA has come out with a bullish call on Sula Vineyard. It has a price target of 475 rupees for the stock. One of the clear arguments in favor of Sula Vineyards is that it's got a dominant market share. It accounts for about 52% of the market share, and CLSA says that globally there's a clear consumer shift towards low alcohol beverages and beverages like wine and beer, and in India too this trend is likely to catch on, and Sula will clearly be one of the big beneficiaries of that. Now there are a few things the arguments against Sula Vineyards also. You could look at it both ways. One is that wine as a component of the overall alcohol beverage category is minuscule at this point in time. It's less than 1%. That also represents an opportunity, but at the same time there needs to be a clear shift in consumer sentiment towards this. Right now most of the consumers are from Maharashtra and Karnataka, which are also the major wine growing centers for Sula. So the trend really has to catch on in a big way in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. According to CLSA, Sula Vineyards margins are quite fat at about 29%, and that will help it invest in category development, which is very critical for the long term growth of this segment.
So was it Friday or your wine colored shirt that you chose Sula Vineyards?
It just seems to be a coincidence. Every Friday, yes, I've noticed that over the last few weeks, I do end up with a spirit
every Friday
stock.
I think Santosh has an alcoholic stock on his radar and watch list.
Thanks
and,
for pointing that out, Yatin.
I don't know why it happens, but yes, he passes off with his soft smile. The other stock, that is on the radar is Manappuram Finance. Obviously, if you look at the financial stocks, there are a lot of advantages for gold loan companies right now, because जैसे ही gold के prices ऊपर move होते हैं, जो collateral gold loan companies के पास होता है loans के against, उसका LTV जो loan to value है वो बढ़ जाता है, जिसके कारण risk जो है कम होता है। एक बात, दूसरी बात, इन जनरल जब गोल्ड प्राइसेस बढ़ते हैं, कोलेट्रल की वैल्यू बढ़ती है, एबिलिटी टू लेंड मोर हैपन्स फॉर गोल्ड लोन कंपनीज। ऑब्वियसली PSU बैंक से एक स्टिफ कंपटीशन मनापुरम को है, लेकिन एनालिस्ट मीट जो हुई कुछ ही दिनों पहले मनापुरम की, वहाँ मैनेजमेंट ने ये क्लियर किया कि वो डाइवर्सिफाई कर रहे हैं गोल्ड लोन बुक, माइक्रो फाइनेंस बिजनेस पे भी फोकस कर रहे हैं, और आगे जाके उन्होंने गाइड किया है कि 20% लोन ग्रोथ और 20% रिटर्न ऑन इक्विटी पे फोकस रहेगा। ऑब्वियसली ये एनालिस्ट मीट अच्छी हुई और स्टॉक में भी आप ट्रैक्शन देख रहे हैं। शायद अगर कंपनी ग्रोथ नंबर्स डिलीवर करेगी तो यहाँ से अच्छी अपसाइड हो सकती है, ऐसा मॉर्गन स्टैनली को लगता है, और 160 रुपीज़ के टारगेट के साथ यहाँ वो खरीदारी की सलाह दे रहे हैं, यानी ऑलमोस्ट एक 30% अपसाइड उनको लगता है करंट मार्केट प्राइस से इस स्टॉक में मिलना चाहिए।
Now, with the overall outlook of the market turning a bit uncertain, Yatin, I think there is greater demand for stocks which have been underperforming for a long
True.
time, where the valuations are somewhat reasonable, and there is also reason to believe that probably the worst may be behind, and the risk reward ratio at these levels probably look attractive. Manappuram Finance is one such stock. A couple of arguments in favor of the stock, Yatin has already mentioned them. One is that the loan to value clearly increases, which means that the risk of default goes down, and also the amount that banks, Manappuram Finance, gold lenders like Manappuram Finance can make to their customers. But at the same time, the bigger play on Manappuram right now is how effectively it will be able to diversify and get its other businesses up to scale. It has made huge, big projections for its CV, mortgage and SME personal loan segment. That is something to watch out for, given the fact that purely in the gold loan segment, right now it's facing a lot of competition from some of the established banks. And with that, it's a wrap on this episode of Closing Bell. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back with you again at 9 AM tomorrow.
जुड़ने के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.